This is what he said on that.
Climate change. Because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, there's climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion.
All right, it was short and sharp. We've heard it before. Katy Daigle is Reuters environment and climate editor, joins me on the set. Really good to have you here, Katy. Just want to go over some of this news and how you reported it and what reading you got from the room, if you like, on the back of the president's comments.
So the president's comments were very much typical of what this administration has said before. To be honest, it doesn't land very well at the UN General Assembly. There are many countries that do not believe this is a hoax. Scientists world over say this is absolutely not a hoax. This is real, and the risk is becoming more acute and urgent, not just for countries, but for businesses.
But my question, I guess, and we're going to speak to Rob Bonta from California and some of the mayors in just a moment. My question is, the more frequently we hear these messages, does this sow more fear locally?
I think everyone is trying to navigate these uncertain waters at the moment, but overwhelmingly we're seeing a lot of kind of pushing past that. Just this week we had Colombia, a fossil fuel dependent country, saying that it wants to hold the first ever conference on phasing out fossil fuels. That would be this April, if they can get ahead with it. That's significant. Colombia relies on fossil fuels for 50% of its exports. And here it is trying to push that agenda forward. We have extreme weather that's getting worse every week. Right now we have Pakistan inundated just 2.5 years after it was last inundated.
And very, very quickly, Climate Day today at the UN. We had, of course, Teresa Ribera from the European Union, from the Commission here on the set yesterday. Tried to get her to tell us what these NDCs might look like. It looks like we're going to be disappointed today.
It's tough. The EU has struggled to come to consensus. That they have 27 countries that need to agree, so that challenge is clear. But the pressure is on all governments. Currently, as of today, 40% of the emissions that humanity has released into the atmosphere have been since the UNFCCC was signed. So, we're clearly charging ahead in the wrong direction still, and governments know this, that they're going to do what they can to, if not announce cuts, then encourage policies that affect that.
Okay, very good, Katy. Well, look, we're going to keep a close eye on the Reuters wire. See if you get anything out there today in terms of headlines and stories. Katy Daigle, thanks a lot. Right, coming up on today's show, we spotlight the policymakers, innovators and financiers reshaping the climate agenda from the ground up. We're going to start in just a moment in California, where the Attorney General's legal battles and policy leadership are setting precedents for climate accountability across the US and beyond. We'll talk to mayors and city officials on how they're deploying policy, technology, and community engagement, and meet climate goals, block by block, borough by borough. And we're going to examine the rising stakes with the chair of the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market, as well as the UN's Special Representative for Disaster Risk Reduction. So a very busy show. First, though, to California, where Attorney General Rob Bonta has become a prominent voice in the national climate debate, especially among advocates of environmental justice. Rob, really good to have you on the set. Thanks for coming by this morning.
With you.
Look, we started with the president's clip there. I've got to ask you a very quick question on it. It was predictable. We've heard it before. I asked Katy whether we keep hearing these messages from the White House, and I wonder if it sows more fear locally, whether public sort of trust is tested more, and whether that makes your job more difficult.
It's predictable. It's old. It's tired. It's anti-science, anti-fact. It hurts global cooperation, and most importantly, it hurts communities. And I think it shows the way he approaches leadership. Leadership is about confronting and acknowledging problems and taking action and being bold and being courageous, not shrinking away from them, denying their existence, hiding from them. He's hiding from them. He's denying their existence. It's a problem. Everybody knows what the science says, and people believe their own lived experiences in their own eyes about climate change. So He's really swimming upstream on this one. I don't think anyone is with him on it.
Okay.
But it is very dangerous for the President of the United States to say such a thing.
Last year during Climate Week, you announced your lawsuit against ExxonMobil. That was the deception around recycling. The year before that, Governor Newsom announced the BP, the ConocoPhillips news. You got anything for us this year? You going to break any news for us this year?
Updates on those two. We brought the first lawsuit on climate change deception with the governor. Proud to do that. California entering the fray with other political subdivisions, other states last year on our lawsuit against ExxonMobil, as you mentioned, on perpetuation of the myth of plastic recycling. We have multiple lawsuits this year, mostly challenging a federal government that is anti-science, doesn't believe in climate change, isn't taking action, is trying to roll back our progress. We've made great progress in our lawsuits. We've blocked the Trump administration from trying to withhold money from electric vehicle infrastructure, from trying to withhold money from FEMA money from pre-disaster mitigation. We're suing on our clean car waivers and other lawsuits. So those lawsuits exist now. They continue to progress, but we're successful.
Okay, so they exist. Give us the latest on the ExxonMobil plastics suit specifically, because yes, these lawsuits exist, but litigation takes a very long time.
It does.
And I know a lot of people are looking at it, fans of yours are looking at it and saying, maybe we should go about this a different way.
Right.
What do you think?
Well, I think there's multiple pathways. Litigation is absolutely one of them. That's our track. We believe in the rule of law and the court system. Litigation to seek justice holds companies accountable when they lie to the American people, to the California people. So we're going to stay on this pathway. Policymakers should and are free to take action. Activists should and are free to take action as well. It's all of the above, all tools in the toolbox. Litigation can be fast when we get restraining orders within days, sometimes the same day. Sometimes it takes time. Here, of course, ExxonMobil, their plan is to delay Judgment Day, to file motions and block and drag feet to delay the ultimate decision. But we're in this for the long haul. We believe we'll prevail in the end.
Of course, at the same time, I've got to ask you whether there are those who question whether it's worth suing the Trump administration on major regulations like, for example, the endangerment finding. Because even if you win in the lower courts, the Supreme Court's going to come in and nix that anyway. Is that a defeatist attitude on my part, or is this something you think about and again wonder how you might approach this from a different way?
I won't call you defeatist, Axel, but I'll say most cases don't get to the U.S. Supreme Court. The federal trial courts and the intermediate appellate courts decide most of the cases. On key issues, the U.S. Supreme Court will take an issue, but they're not outcome determinative. They're going to look at the case. They're going to analyze it based on the facts. They definitely have a more conservative bent right now. But we believe that our cases are strong. When we have the law and the facts on our side, we can prevail in any court, and we should, including the U.S. Supreme Court. So we think it's important. Anytime the Trump administration breaks the law, violates the Constitution, hold them accountable, sue them. The courts will decide what they're going to do if they believe in our case and if they find for us. But we can't. Nope. There's no passes. The rule of law governs, and it applies to everyone, including the President of the United States.
Do you worry, Rob? And I ask you this, personally, your family and the sort of kickback you get from the whether it's the White House or the government or anyone related to that, linked to that. Do you fear for your safety sometimes, given the prominent role you play in fighting this White House and fighting this president?
I think that's what the president wants people to worry about and wants them to think that's part of his bullying, his intimidation, his threatening, to make people fearful, to talk about prosecuting them. He's going after my colleague here, Tish James in New York. And that politicization of the Department of Justice is very dangerous. But no, we're prudent. We take protocols. This job has a high profile on any time, certainly now with the Trump administration having the role it has on us vis-a-vis them. So we take prudent steps. But I do my job. I sign up to do a job. We're going, full speed, full tank of gas, and completely committed to it.
And when you spoke at a Reuters Impact event last year in October, and you said, I watched that just before this show, California is going to be California regardless of who's in the White House. fine, but I imagine you didn't expect to be so busy as you are now. You don't have a daughter of California, as you've said before, in the White House. Right. 39 lawsuits against the president in, 29, 30 weeks?
35 weeks. 39 and 35 weeks.
39, 35. And is it going to get busier?
Yeah.
Yeah? So you got a lot more planned?
The Trump administration is showing no signs of slowing down on its law-breaking. If the Trump administration was judged based on how frequently and consistently, how brazenly and blatantly it's violated the law, it would be the most successful presidency in the history of the United States. And so we don't want to sue the Trump administration at all. That would be great. That would mean that the Trump administration is complying with the law, complying with the Constitution. But each and every time they violate the law, they hurt my state and my people, we will sue them and we will take them to court. So far that's meant more than once a week. We definitely have more lawsuits planned, maybe some that we could announce as early as this week or next week. There's a bunch of actions that we're tracking that look like they could amount to lawsuits.
Yep.
So,
and this is against the government, or is this? Are we talking corporates and the fossil fuel companies again?
I was referring to the Trump administration.
The Trump administration. Okay. Are we going to see anything else in the corporate space?
I think so. We have ongoing investigations. We're looking more broadly at the myth of plastic recycling that's been perpetuated. We've sued ExxonMobil, but there are others who have been involved in perpetuating that myth, we believe. So we're pursuing that and looking at the possibility of another lawsuit. We have an important PFAS lawsuit, Forever Chemicals lawsuit. So we're taking big swings that we think are appropriate based on the law, based on the facts, that can really make a difference to advance climate action.
Who are you talking to this week here in New York? I mean, who do you really want to talk to this week in New York who maybe you haven't organized meetings with? Who do you need to talk to here in New York?
I talked to Jane Fonda yesterday.
Oh, you did?
And
okay.
That was very inspiring to see someone who continues to fight, who has such courage, who is has such moral clarity about the need to act, given what we're facing with the attacks on democracy, the attacks on climate action. I'm proud to be here with my legislative partners who have been working overtime in the California legislature, really doing great work over many years. We're here to talk about the California story, to provide inspiration, a blueprint for others, and I think we're doing that.
And finally, are you in touch with your predecessor, with Kamala Harris?
I am.
How's she doing?
She's doing well. She's busy on a book tour now. We've crossed paths in Los Angeles and in California. Obviously, she had a really tough campaign and is telling her story as is appropriate. But she looks great. She's continuing to be the great leader that she's always been. I'm proud to have known her since she was the district attorney of San Francisco, supported her in all her races, and honored that she continues to be a daughter of California that leads with such grace, courage, and conviction.
All right. Rob, look, thanks so much for coming in today. I really appreciate you starting the show today. Rob Bonta,
Thank you.
From California. Right, from Cleveland to New York to London, cities are rewriting the climate playbook in real time, navigating politics, infrastructure, and public pressure. In a moment, we're going to hear from 3 urban leaders. Just before Climate Week, though, I spoke with Christiana Figueres, one of the architects, of course, of the Paris Climate Accord. She was also, until recently, vice chair of the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. That's a network of cities committed to climate action. This is what she had to say about the importance of local leadership.
The role of subnational governments is absolutely key, because while national governments set the direction, it really is the subnational governments that have much more of a say and they're much more closely located to the point of action. So they are the key figures from the public sector. They are the ones that can decarbonize their cities or their regions. They're the ones that can put local policies and measures in place in order to support what is already happening on behalf of the market economy.
Right, joining me now, Justin Bibb, Cleveland's first millennial mayor, who's spearheading a $5 billion lakefront redevelopment and other infrastructure investments aimed at positioning the city as a national test case for urban climate resilience. Rid Agarwal is New York City's chief climate officer and head of the City Department of Environmental Protection, leading efforts to overhaul New York's aging environmental infrastructure. And Mete Coban is London's deputy mayor for environment and energy, who is driving the city's climate strategy with a focus on community-led initiatives. Really good to have all of you here. You know, we just heard Christiana talk about the importance of leadership at the subnational level, and we will talk more about that. But let me ask you first, you know, on the back again of the comments from the U.S. President of the United Nations yesterday on climate, I'll ask you, and Justin, let me start with you. How detrimental in practice is the federal stance on climate to what you're trying to achieve? What does it actually stop you doing?
It's very detrimental to cities like Cleveland all across the country. For example, we won millions of dollars through the Solar for All grant program that would allow us to install free solar panels for working class families in Cleveland. That funding just got cut. 1,200 families now are going to have higher utility bills in my city. And the list goes on and on. And so despite this federal retrenchment we're seeing, mayors are standing in the gap, fighting the good fight, but we need a federal partner.
Okay, so what you're saying, Justin, is, okay, while the money on the one hand might go, or a lot of it might disappear, you feel a renewed and a greater sense of urgency and responsibility as a result of that. How does that actually translate into getting stuff done?
Well, for example, it's going to look different. One tool we have at the city of Cleveland is around energy procurement. We just passed legislation with City Council to retrofit buildings across the city, taking that savings and redeveloping our police stations across the city, for example. We're working with grassroots activists to install more solar panels where we can. We're enhancing our tree canopy to cut down on asthma rates and improve air quality. So we are still seeing progress, but we need a federal partner to fight the good fight.
Yeah, okay. Rit, same sort of question to you. On the funding piece, how much of what you do forges ahead without federal funding? Because I know you're doing a big coastal protection network piece in the Red Hook neighborhood right now. Where does that money come from, and how much momentum can you build around money that isn't federal money?
Well, look, I think just like the Attorney General of California just said, California will always be California. New York will always be New York. New York started its work on climate under the George Bush administration, George W. Bush, when Dick Cheney was trying to build hundreds of new coal-fired power plants, right? We know how to do climate action in the face of federal opposition. As the mayor said, it is costly. We'd much rather have the federal money flowing in, as it did under the previous administration, as it did under the Obama administration, to help us. And just as the mayor said, we've lost Solar for All money. We're going to have low-income people who won't get their homes retrofitted. We're going to have neighborhoods that are going to have a longer wait before they get the stormwater and coastal protections that they like. But the fact is, New York City generally funds most of what we need. The federal government helps, but we do most of it on our own. And the legislative and policy power that we have, we control our building code here at the local level. We've put in congestion pricing in partnership with the state, and we are working aggressively not just to protect Brooklyn, but across the city.
Okay. And Mete, look, I know all you guys know each other. I mean, I'm sure you talk a lot. I'm keen to explore the collaboration between you all and what you learn from each other. What is, and we'll come on to what you're doing specifically in London in a moment, but what do you learn from New York and the way New York deals with heat, in particular heat, I guess, but also the flooding risk?
Yeah, I mean, look, my first visit actually when I arrived in New York was together with Rit. We went to Flushing Bay to see one of the water treatment plants, because in London we have a big plan to clean all 41 of our rivers. And of course, New York City has the biggest municipally owned water company, whereas in London we have Thames Water, which is a privatized company. And there's so much learning between cities. We delivered the world's largest clean air zone. You know, we've been working collaboratively with cities like Bogota, for example, around their clean air zone, Warsaw around their clean air zone. The work that New York City is doing around their building energy efficiency, which is going to help save, you know, so many tons of carbon, but also create so many new jobs and high-quality jobs. There's so much that we're learning, from planning infrastructure to transportation, to green infrastructure to flooding. And I think that's the beauty of why we're here. I'm here also representing C40 cities, which is over 100 cities taking action on climate. And that's part of the big focus we're trying to bring to New York, which is around actually where we have some countries who are delaying progress. Actually, like Mayor Bibb has already said, cities are already leading the way.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to heat, Because I'm also really intrigued to know what you learned from, say, cities in the Middle East, where it's getting really, really bad. But very quickly, Mehdi, a lot of your priorities are shaped by your upbringing. You're growing up in East London. Are we seeing enough equitable change happening in London? I'd be interested to hear from you guys on this as well. You know, really getting the money and getting the effort to where it matters most.
Yeah, look, I think the green transition is one of the biggest economic opportunities in the 21st century. I think it's a huge opportunity for us to think about how we can redistribute wealth, particularly to working class communities. I myself, like you said, I'm not a traditional environmentalist, but partly the reason why I grew to care about this issue is because I saw my family suffering from a yearly increase on their energy bills because we're dependent on fossil fuels. And we are seeing action. We've got the biggest retrofit program in London's history, 22,000 homes that will be improving their energy efficiency, which means that we will no longer have residents having to choose between heating or eating during the winter. But also on heat specifically, we've had a really bold program of making sure we're getting water fountains across the city, retrofitting our homes so they're cooler in the summer because we know we're going to have more heat waves, but also making sure that we're creating shading across our streets by planting more trees.
Justin, are you doing that equitable bit well enough in Cleveland?
Absolutely. As my colleagues mentioned, this is not only about addressing climate change, but about a work, wages, and wealth agenda at the local level. In Cleveland, we believe the green energy economy can create nearly 10,000 good-paying jobs by 2030. So we're investing in Clevelanders. We're training high school students to be apprentices to weatherize homes, install solar panels. That's how we make sure these benefits are broad-based.
What worries you most about the whole context now that we're operating in? I mean, clearly there's a lot of pressure on you guys. You know, we hear it from Christiana, we hear it from everyone. Yeah, you know, the cities and the states, they've got this. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility. What worries you most now, Rick?
Look, I don't know that it's a worry, but the task ahead is about delivering. Right? It's not about pronouncements. It's not about new commitments. It's about delivering the stuff we've already committed to. We've been focused over the last 4 years on implementing our Local Law 97, which is our building decarbonization mandate, which somebody pointed out to me yesterday involves the highest price per ton of any legislative carbon cap in the world. We've been working on green infrastructure, which is one of our key strategies for equity. Actually, a disproportionate share of our green infrastructure is in low-income neighborhoods. It's a good thing. And we've got a lot of infrastructure to build. So the task is on us to stay focused and deliver efficiently and quickly.
How are you, just very specifically on the heat piece, because this is clearly an issue in London. I live in London. It's getting worse in London. How are you, give us a sense of some of the exciting projects that you've got planned to deal with the heat piece other than AC, because we can't air condition our way out of this, right?
Well, look, I will say actually, and this is very much driven by an equity concern, one of our key initiatives is to go ahead and do a mandate for indoor air conditioning. We've come to the conclusion that outdoor air temperatures are really important to manage, and we've done a lot of tree work, and the green infrastructure is a key part of that. But ultimately, in New York City, people die from heat. We've had more than, we think, our estimates are 500 New Yorkers have died from climate change-induced extra heat over the last decade, compared to 56, each one a tragedy, but 56 losses due to climate change-related flooding since Hurricane Sandy, or including Hurricane Sandy. People die because of the temperature in their bedroom, and they are only people who don't have air conditioning or are so low income that they have an air conditioner and don't run it because they worry about the energy.
Do you have a handle on it? Do you have a handle on this problem, do you think, in New York? Do you have a handle on this problem in Cleveland?
We have a lot more work to do, but one thing we have done is we've invested in our rec centers to be resilient hubs. So whether it's a winter storm or cold temperatures or when it's a really hot day in the summertime, making sure our rec centers can be that resilience hub for residents who can't afford to have AC in their home or don't have a warm place to go when it gets really cold outside.
What do you take back, Mehdi, to London from a week like this one in New York? I mean, there's clearly a lot of talking shop going on. Criticism is leveled at a lot of people because exactly for that reason. What sort of can you take back to London that you can really use to make things better in our city?
Well, I think firstly, there's a sense of optimism coming out of New York. You know, lots of people coming into New York were concerned about how big New York climate would be, and I believe this is the biggest ever New York Climate Week. So I think there is a sense of businesses, innovators, policymakers coming together to really make sure that we're pushing ahead with climate action. But also, like I say, on a practical level, there's so many things that I've learned from other mayors just being here. And I think going into COP30, our big push is making sure that actually when we're talking at an international level, we need to be talking about cities, because cities are where most people will be living and where we're going to see the impacts of climate change.
And of course, London Climate Week was astonishing this year. We did this show actually in the centre of London for London Climate Week, and there was a lot of momentum there. No, I've got to stop it. Thank you so much for coming in, Justin, Rit, and Metai. Many thanks. Good luck to you all as well. Right, up next, Annette Nazareth, Chair of the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market, and Kamal Kishore, Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction. We're going to tackle the global risk equation, from climate finance to disaster resilience, and what it takes to build trust, accountability, and preparedness in an era of compounding crises.
At a time when truth and new ideas have never been more important, Reuters Next examines the big issues without fear or favor to get a clearer picture about what lies ahead.
Reuters Next Gulf will provide a forum to ignite real change and to build a better tomorrow for generations to come.
Join us at Reuters Next, because in a time of great change, the most important question is, what's next?
All right, welcome back, everyone. Joining us here in our studio is Annette Nazareth, Chair of the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market, former SEC Commissioner with decades of experience in financial regulation and global governance. Next to her is Kamal Kishore, Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction, who brings nearly 30 years of experience in disaster preparedness across the UN, government and civil society. Really good to see you both. I mean, you and I, we're making a habit of this, Annette. So let's get an update from you. I mean, look, for the layperson, the Integrity Council for Voluntary Carbon Market, it's a mouthful to say the least, that it's also, there's a lot of sort of haziness there. You're trying to get transparency into the whole carbon space. How are you doing on that? Because I know a lot of criticism has been leveled at you and the organization for not moving fast enough.
Well, I think we're making great progress, actually. And you know, the last time you and I spoke, we were a pretty nascent organization. And we really started with our core carbon principles, which are the framework that define high-integrity carbon credits. And that the core carbon principles and assessment framework have been implemented. Mm-hmm. And we now have 7 of the largest carbon crediting programs with the core carbon principle label, and 28 methodologies that have been approved for trading. And I would say that by the end of the year, we will have assessed all of the methodologies that the programs were ready for us to assess. And then we expect them to come in with more next year. So we're seeing some real progress.
Yep. Approvals are still low, though, right?
Well, we were asked to assess 50 methodologies. We approved 28. Okay. But that's sort of a sign of you know, that we have a high bar for integrity. But having said that, at this point in time, 46% of the credits that are now being issued have the CCP label. So we're seeing real adoption. And what's very gratifying is the market is essentially telling us that they have put a high value on our work, because the CCP labeled carbon credits are trading at approximately 25% premium over those credits that don't have the CCP label. So what that says is this label is, you know, it represents high quality. Yeah. And it's important that when purchasers buy credits, they don't have to do massive amounts of due diligence themselves. They've got a framework that has established what a high integrity credit is. What
role should voluntary carbon markets play in building climate resilience, especially in vulnerable regions?
Right.
And I want to put that to you as well, Kamal.
Right. I think they play a very important role. You know, carbon credits are not the only answer. They're a tool in what I hope is a massive toolbox to address our climate issues. I mean, first and foremost, we agree with climate scientists, we need to get our emissions down, and corporates are working very hard to do that. But we can't do it all fast enough. And so, carbon credits really enhance and scale up our ability to address climate action by providing finance for projects that would not otherwise have occurred, but that will be able, in the near term, to reduce emissions. So they play a very important role.
What do you think, Kamal, just in terms of their role and products like that, to help reduce risk, build resilience, especially in the global south?
I think anything we can bring to bear to mobilize money for investment in adaptation and resilience, disaster risk reduction, we should deploy that. Because we are making no investment or close to no investment in adaptation and resilience and disaster risk reduction. This is despite the fact that there is enough evidence that if you invest in resilience, it's the best return on investment you're going to get. The good news is that in many parts of the world, the investment that has been made in risk reduction has actually delivered results. So if you live in a cyclone, hurricane, typhoon-prone area anywhere in the world now, the chances of dying now are a third of what they were 15 years ago. But this progress is not enough. Yep. We have to do a lot more. We have the problem of extreme heat. We have the problem of floods. Geography of flood is changing. Drought is changing. Yep. I think governments, private sector, everybody needs to do a lot more in terms of financing risk reduction.
Of course, Annette's work is all about, or a lot of it is about accountability and transparency. And I want to ask you as well about ensuring both accountability and transparency in multilateral initiatives, including the work that you do. How big a priority is that for you and for the organization you work for?
I think it's a great priority. It's very important that the investment we make shows measurable results. And there are three parts to that problem, three parts to the solution to that problem. One is that we need much better tracking of losses and damages, much more granular. And I think this is something which requires detailed, tedious, boring work. This is really the plumbing of risk reduction work. The second is that losses are not the only thing. We also have to look prospective risk. So if we have commonly accepted risk matrix globally for disaster and climate risk, what is the risk of losses? That is really important. And the third is put money at the local level.
Okay. Annette, when does, I think this is a question I've asked you before, but I will continue to ask this. When does the voluntary piece, in your view, need to become mandatory? Is voluntary enough right now to get this stuff done?
No, voluntary is really just a means to enhance our ability.
It's a holding pattern.
It's a holding pattern in a sense, yes. And but even if all governments sort of met their commitments today to reduce emissions, we still would not meet our climate goals. So the voluntary part of this is very important. But the bottom line is that the voluntary and the compliance markets are becoming very much interchangeable. And a big point of the way we established our work was that it would work interchangeably with Article 6, and we're starting to see a lot more interchange between the two. So I think it's going to be important. But ultimately, if governments decide to take this over, that would be.
And is that the outcome you want? Is that the goal for you?
I think the goal is to do whatever we can to get our emissions down and to have the biggest, carbon market that we can to assist in that process. Obviously, with reductions and removals, also on the compliance side being very important.
Yeah. Kamal, a final question for you. It sort of goes a little bit off piece, but it goes back to what we heard from the mayors on combating heat, extreme heat, because I know you've done a lot of work on this, and the Secretary General announced his call to action a year ago. How are you doing on that? It seems most government responses, what I'm getting is most government responses need to be more systemic and less reactive when they're looking at this extreme heat issue.
I think we are not doing enough. There are three pieces to it. The first piece is reducing deaths immediately by quick response. I think on that we are doing a lot better than what we were doing a few years ago. The second is that when you stop construction sites, when you stop vendors from vending in the street because it's too hot, they need some kind of social protection, some kind of protection for their incomes. The third bigger piece is that there is no way around transforming our built environment, our economies.
Yeah.
We are, as you said a few minutes ago, we are not going to be able to air condition our way out of it. We have to make passive cooling cool. There needs to be much greater demand for passive cooling so that air conditioning load goes down. The cities are greener. We incorporate nature-based solutions. That is really the deep piece of work, transformative work, which needs to happen.
Okay, very good. Kamal, Annette, great to see you both. Thanks so much for coming by the studios this morning. Right, coming up, a global look at the capital divide from climate finance to energy equity. This will be a candid conversation on closing the investment gap where it matters most. Plenty of guests coming up, you can see on the screen there. Nancy Funn from DBL is going to be on with Bill Lenihan. A very interesting company Bill is running, and I believe a company Nancy invests in as well. Brian Garcia of Connecticut Green Bank and Fatima Denton will also be on, among others. Just before we do go to that, I want to go back to Christiana Figueres, because I asked her about the finance context and whether she was disappointed that a lot of the momentum and impetus around coalitions set up to finance this space seem to have fallen away since Paris. This is what she said.
I'm not disappointed. What I see is that the financial world has rightly moved back from giving itself public exposure of what they are doing because of the toxicity of the U.S. administration. But all of these coalitions that mushroomed after Paris, some of them are no longer in effect. That does not mean that their members are pulling back. With one exception, none of those banks or financial institutions or asset owners have actually pulled back from their own net zero commitment, because they understand something that is very key. Climate risk is investment risk.
So who's driving investment now in climate and development, and who's being left behind? Joining us are three leaders with deep expertise across finance, energy and sustainability. Avinash Persaud is Special Advisor on Climate Change to the President of the Inter-American Development Bank. He brings over 30 years of experience in finance, public policy and academia to this. Damilola Ogunbi is the CEO of Sustainable Energy for All, SE for All, and a global advocate for energy equity. And Dan O'Clear, CEO
of reason used in international relations. They are the best defense against the law of the strongest. A world without rules